I left work early to surprise my husband with his favorite dinner, but when I opened our front door, I heard champagne bottles popping and laughter coming from the living room. They were celebrating something, someone. And when I stepped inside, 6 pairs of eyes turned to me, guilty, shocked, silent. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people you trusted most, this story will hit close to home. What happens next will shock you, and my revenge. Even I didn't know I had it in me. Hit subscribe because you need to see how a broken woman becomes unstoppable. Let's begin. My name is Violet, and 2 years ago I thought I'd found my forever. Adrian swept into my life like a dream. Charming, successful, and so attentive it made my friends jealous. We met at a charity gala where I was showcasing some design work for my firm. He couldn't take his eyes off me all night, or so he said. Within 8 months, we were married in a beautiful ceremony that his mother, Margaret, orchestrated with military precision. I should have seen the warning signs then. The way she critiqued every choice I made, from my dress to the flowers, the way she whispered to Adrian during our vows, making him stumble over his words. The cold smile she gave me when we cut the cake, like she knew something I didn't, but I was young and in love, and I ignored the poison beneath the surface. I told myself that Margaret just needed time to warm up to me, that her constant criticism about my clothes, my career, my cooking, my family background, all of it was just her being protective of her son. When she said I wasn't sophisticated enough for their family, I enrolled in etiquette classes. When she said my career as a graphic designer was cute but not serious, I worked twice as hard to prove myself. I bent myself into shapes I didn't recognize, trying to earn the approval of a woman who had already decided I would never be good enough. The first year of marriage was tolerable. Adrian was still affectionate, still present, but 6 months ago, everything shifted. He became cold, distant, always glued to his phone. He'd leave the room to take calls, speaking in hushed tones. He started working late, coming home smelling like unfamiliar perfume. When I confronted him, he'd get angry, accuse me of being paranoid and insecure. He made me feel crazy for noticing what was right in front of my face. And then the family dinners started. Secret gatherings at Margaret and Henry's house that I wasn't invited to. Adrian would come home reeking of wine and expensive food, making excuses about last-minute business meetings. But I saw the family group chat notifications on his phone. I saw Margaret's messages. "Tonight at 7, don't bring her." I pretended not to notice. I swallowed my hurt and smiled when he kissed my forehead and told me he loved me. The worst part? The medical gaslighting. 3 months ago, I found pregnancy test boxes in our bathroom trash. Not 1, but 3. They weren't mine. I hadn't taken any tests. When I asked Adrian about them, he barely looked up from his laptop. "Oh, those are Carmen's," he said casually. "She's my coworker. She needed somewhere private to take them. You know how office gossip is." I believed him. God, I believed him. He made it sound so reasonable, so innocent. Then came the bank statements. Large cash deposits into Adrian's account, amounts that didn't match his salary. When I asked, he said they were bonuses from work. But I knew his company's bonus structure. These numbers didn't add up. I started having this gnawing feeling in my gut, this instinct that something was terribly wrong. But every time I tried to voice my concerns, Adrian made me feel foolish. Margaret was even worse. She'd pat my hand condescendingly and say, "Marriage is about trust, dear. If you keep questioning him, you'll push him away." Looking back, I realized they were training me to doubt myself, to stay quiet, to accept whatever story they fed me. They were grooming me for the role of the obedient, discarded wife. Wednesday afternoon changed everything. My client meeting was canceled at the last minute, which never happens. I decided to head home early and surprise Adrian with his favorite meal, homemade lasagna with garlic bread, the recipe his grandmother taught me before she passed. It was one of the few things Margaret couldn't criticize because it came from Adrian's beloved grandmother. I stopped at the grocery store, picking up fresh basil and the expensive Parmesan Adrian loved. I was actually humming in the car, imagining his surprised smile when he came home to the smell of dinner cooking. But As I turned onto our street, I noticed Margaret and Henry's luxury sedan parked in our driveway. Odd, since it was the middle of a workday. Then I saw the unfamiliar red sports car gleaming in the afternoon sun. My stomach dropped. Something felt wrong. Instead of pulling into the driveway, I parked down the street and walked slowly toward our house, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I used my key to unlock the front door as quietly as possible. That's when I heard it, champagne bottles popping, the sound of crystal glasses clinking together, laughter echoing through our home. Margaret's shrill voice rang out clearly, "Finally, a real heir to our family." My hands started trembling. I set down the grocery bags by the door and walked on shaking legs toward the living room. Every step felt like I was walking toward an execution. My execution. The scene I walked into will be burned into my memory until the day I die. Adrian sat on our cream-colored couch, his arm draped casually around a young woman I'd never seen before. She wore an expensive-looking cream maternity dress that hugged her very obviously pregnant belly. 5, maybe 6 months along. Margaret stood beside them, clutching ultrasound pictures to her chest, actual tears of joy streaming down her face. Henry was pouring champagne into crystal flutes, the expensive kind we only brought out for special occasions, and hanging above the fireplace was a banner that made my blood run cold. "Baby Adrian Jr. coming soon." The room froze when they noticed me standing in the doorway, Adrian's face drained of all color. Margaret's joyful expression melted into something cold and calculating. Henry fumbled with the champagne bottle, nearly dropping it, but the pregnant woman, she just smiled. A small, satisfied smirk that told me she'd been waiting for this moment. "So this is where my husband spends his Wednesdays," I said. My voice came out calmer than I felt, almost detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Margaret recovered first, because of course she did. She straightened her designer blazer and gestured to an empty chair like she was the hostess of this nightmare. "Violet, darling, come in. We need to talk like adults." The condescension in her voice made my skin crawl. Adrian still couldn't look at me. He stared at the floor, his jaw clenched, his arm still around this woman who was carrying what was apparently his child. The woman extended her hand to me with the confidence of someone who'd already won. "I'm Carmen," she said sweetly. "Adrian's real love." Real love. The words hit me like a physical slap. I didn't take her hand. "We've been together for 10 months, Carmen continued, her hand moving to caress her pregnant belly in a gesture that felt deliberately cruel. "The baby's due in 3 months. Adrian and I are so excited." 10 months. I did the math in my head. He'd started cheating on me just 4 months after our first wedding anniversary. While I was planning our anniversary trip to the Bahamas, he was sleeping with her. Margaret stepped forward, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Triumph. "Violet, we never wanted you in this family. You were always temporary." She said that word like it was poison. A placeholder. "Adrian married you because I pushed him to settle down for appearances' sake. We had important business deals that required him to look stable and committed. You served that purpose adequately." The cruelty was breathtaking. Henry, looking uncomfortable but not nearly uncomfortable enough, added weakly, "You have to understand, we needed to maintain our family's reputation." Adrian finally spoke, and his words destroyed whatever was left of my heart. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Not sorry for cheating. Not sorry for destroying our marriage. Sorry I found out." Margaret launched into a speech that revealed the true depths of their cruelty. "You can't have children, dear. The tests proved it. Remember all those appointments with Dr. Stevens? The hormone treatments that never worked? You're infertile, Violet. It's not your fault, of course, but it's the truth. Carmen, on the other hand, is fertile, young, from an excellent family background. She's carrying the heir we desperately needed. You should be grateful we're being civil about this divorce instead of dragging you through public humiliation." My mind reeled. The fertility treatments. The months of injections and pills that made me sick. The appointments where Dr. Stevens would shake his head sadly and tell me my hormone levels were all wrong. The nights I cried myself to sleep, feeling like my body had betrayed me. The way Adrian would hold me and say it didn't matter, that he loved me anyway. All of it had been lies? I heard my voice ask questions, but it felt like someone else was speaking. The answers came out so casually, like they were discussing the weather. Those pregnancy tests I found? Margaret had planted them deliberately to mess with my head. My birth control pills? Adrian had been replacing them with placebos for 6 months with the help of Margaret's pharmacist friend. They wanted me to think I was infertile. The medical reports Margaret showed me from Dr. Stevens? All fabricated. He was a family friend who wrote whatever Margaret requested. They'd systematically destroyed my sense of reality. They'd made me believe my body was broken when it wasn't. They'd watched me suffer, watched me blame myself, and they'd enjoyed it. But Carmen's revelation was somehow even worse. She wasn't just some random mistress. She was Margaret's goddaughter. This entire thing had been planned from the beginning. Margaret had arranged for Carmen to seduce Adrian after our wedding. They'd waited a full year to make it seem natural. To avoid suspicion, Carmen had been promised marriage to Adrian after our divorce, the family mansion, and a $2 million trust fund for the baby. I was never a wife, I was a pawn in their sick game. Margaret pulled out a folder of medical documents, waving them like evidence at a trial. Dr. Stevens documented everything, dear. You are infertile. You always were. We did you a favor, really, letting you believe you had a chance. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to clench them into fists. I want to see my actual doctor's report, not Dr. Stevens, my gynecologist, Dr. Patterson. Margaret actually laughed. Oh, darling, Dr. Stevens is one of the most respected fertility specialists in the state. He wrote what the tests showed. You're broken, Violet. Accept it. The word broken echoed in my head. That's what they'd been trying to do all along. Break me. Then Henry dropped the financial bombshell. The house I thought Adrian and I owned together? Adrian had forged my signature on a quitclaim deed months ago. It was now solely in his name. My savings account that had over $60,000 in it emptied last month. Adrian had transferred everything to an offshore account. Margaret's legal team had already drafted divorce papers. They'd planned to leave me with absolutely nothing. Margaret handed me a manila envelope like she was doing me a favor. Inside were divorce papers and a settlement offer. $50,000. After 2 years of marriage, after the emotional abuse, after stealing my money, after destroying my faith in my own body, they were offering me $50,000. Carmen's voice dripped with false sympathy. That's actually quite generous. You should take it and move on gracefully. Margaret's eyes went cold. Sign today and leave quietly, Violet, or we'll destroy your career too. We have evidence of you stealing from your design firm. My connections can blacklist you from every reputable company in this industry. You'll never work again. The threat hung in the air. They had fabricated evidence, created a complete conspiracy to destroy every aspect of my life. They'd thought of everything, planned for every contingency, left me with no options, except they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. I felt something shift inside me. The tears that had been threatening to fall dried up. A strange calm settled over my body. I looked at each of their faces, Margaret's smug satisfaction, Henry's uncomfortable guilt, Adrian's cowardice, Carmen's triumphant smile, and I started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized she had nothing left to lose. And that made me the most dangerous person in the room. You really think you've won, don't you? I said quietly. Margaret's smile widened. This isn't a game, dear. You've already lost. I pulled out my phone, and Adrian's eyes went wide with panic. What are you doing? Oh, Margaret, I said, my voice steady now. You taught me well. It absolutely is a game, and I've been playing it longer than you think. I showed them my phone screen. The recording app had been running since I walked into the house, every word, every confession, every detail of their conspiracy. Adrian lunged for the phone, but I stepped back smoothly. "It's already uploaded to the cloud," I said, "and sent to someone very special, my best friend Rachel. You remember Rachel, don't you, Margaret? The FBI white-collar crime investigator?" The color drained from Margaret's face, but I wasn't done. Not even close. I pulled a folder from my purse. Yes, I'd been carrying it this whole time, waiting for the right moment. I dropped it on the coffee table, and papers spilled out across the ultrasound pictures. "DNA results," I said simply, "for Carmen's baby." Carmen went absolutely still. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "The baby isn't Adrian's," I said, watching their faces. "It's Henry's." The explosion was immediate. Margaret screamed. Henry's face went white. Adrian jumped up from the couch, looking between Carmen and his father in horror. Carmen tried to run, but her pregnant belly slowed her down. "You've been sleeping with my father?" Adrian's voice cracked. The truth came pouring out. Carmen and Henry had been having an affair for 8 months. When Carmen got pregnant, she panicked. The plan had been to seduce Adrian, make him think the baby was his, secure her position in the family. She'd been sleeping with both father and son, and neither of them had known. But I'd known. Because 4 months ago, I'd hired a private investigator. Not because I suspected the affair with Adrian. I'd suspected something far worse. And I'd been right. "Speaking of investigations," I continued, my voice cutting through the chaos, "I also have documentation of Adrian's embezzlement from his own company, roughly $300,000 over the past year. I have evidence of Margaret's tax fraud and the offshore accounts she's been hiding from the IRS. And Henry, those business deals you've been bragging about, they're illegal. I sent everything to the FBI, the IRS, and the corporate fraud division." Rachel was very interested in the information. Margaret tried to speak, but I held up my hand. I wasn't finished. "The house you think you stole from me? That quitclaim deed Adrian forged? Legally worthless. My grandmother left this house to me in an ironclad trust. Adrian's forgery is a felony. I've already filed charges." I looked at Adrian, who'd collapsed back onto the couch. "The police should be here any minute." Margaret tried to run for the door. I blocked her path. "And those fabricated evidence about me stealing from my company? My boss, Mr. Peterson, has been my mentor for 8 years. I warned him about your plan last week. He didn't believe it for a second. His lawyers are preparing a defamation lawsuit as we speak. Your connections? Margaret, they're about to run from you like rats from a sinking ship." The sirens started wailing outside. Red and blue lights flashed through our windows. Margaret looked at me with pure hatred. "You vindictive little—" "Careful," I interrupted. "Everything you say is still being recorded." The police knocked on the door. I walked over calmly and let them in. Adrian was arrested for forgery and financial fraud. Henry was taken in for questioning about his illegal business dealings. Margaret was hysterical, screaming threats at everyone. Carmen sat on the couch crying, her hand over her belly, begging me for mercy. I looked at Carmen one last time. "You wanted to be part of this family so badly? Congratulations, you got exactly what you deserved." As they led Adrian out in handcuffs, he finally looked at me. "Violet, please. I'm sorry. I love you." "No," I said quietly. "You loved what I could give you. You loved having someone to control. But you never loved me, and that's the only thing I'm grateful for, because it makes this so much easier." The next 2 months were a legal whirlwind. Adrian's company fired him and filed criminal charges. He was looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. Margaret and Henry's assets were frozen by the IRS. Federal investigators found years of tax evasion and fraud. The family mansion that Margaret was so proud of, seized for unpaid taxes. Carmen, now 7 months pregnant, was kicked out with nowhere to go. Henry filed for divorce from Margaret to try to save himself, which only made things worse. The entire family empire imploded spectacularly. My divorce was finalized in 2 months. Adrian was desperate to settle, probably hoping it would help his criminal case. It didn't. I kept the house, recovered all my stolen money, and received $3.5 million from Adrian's family trust as part of the settlement. 6 months after that terrible Wednesday, my life looked completely different. My design firm promoted me to creative director. I started a nonprofit organization to help women escape financially abusive marriages. I met someone new. Ironically, he was one of the lawyers who helped with my case. He's patient and kind, and he thinks I'm strong, not broken. And then came the biggest surprise. I started feeling sick in the mornings. At first, I thought it was stress, but when it continued for 2 weeks, I went to see Dr. Patterson, my actual gynecologist, not Margaret's fake specialist. She ran tests and came back with a smile. I was pregnant, naturally, easily. There had never been anything wrong with me. I sat in that examination room staring at the ultrasound of my tiny baby, and I cried, not sad tears, not angry tears, tears of relief and joy and vindication. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. "You're broken, Violet." But I wasn't. I had never been broken. My daughter was born healthy and beautiful 9 months later. I named her Aurora, for the dawn, for new beginnings, for light after darkness. 1 year after that terrible discovery, I received a letter from Margaret. It was forwarded from her new address, a small apartment in a bad part of town. She'd lost everything. The letter was pages long, full of excuses and justifications, and buried at the very end a plea for forgiveness. She claimed she was destitute, alone, that karma had punished her enough. I read it once. Then I picked up a pen and wrote one word on the envelope. Temporary. The same word she'd used to describe me. I sent it back unopened and threw away her letter without a second thought. They tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a seed. The cruelty they showed me taught me to be ruthless when necessary. The lies they told me taught me to trust my instincts. The pain they caused me taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. I have no regrets, only lessons. My daughter will grow up knowing that her mother never stayed where she wasn't valued. That being kind doesn't mean being weak. That sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's building a beautiful life from the ashes they left behind. If this story made your blood boil, if you cheered when I fought back, if you believe that karma is real, smash that subscribe button right now. Share this with every woman who needs to remember she's not weak, she's just waiting for the right moment. Comment below, "I am not temporary," and let's build an army of unbreakable souls. Part 2 is coming soon, where I'll reveal what happened to Carmen's baby and Margaret's final downfall. You won't want to miss it. Remember this. They can try to break you, but only you decide if you stay broken. Choose power. Choose yourself. Every single time.